as you can see, I have imported or attached an image of a butterfly. Pick something simple that can be flat for your first attempt at making the joint and the hinge or whatever option you choose for that flexi point. I also have a restriction with my bed space, my printable bed space, which is 5.5. I decided to make my overall piece 5. Instead of 5.5, I went with 5. So that changes my parameters. So just make sure when you bring it in, you scale it. The first thing you're going to have to do is basically outline your object. And then I just chose one wing. I want them to be identical, so I just chose one. Now, it doesn't need to be perfect, and I do not want 2 wings on this because I want it to be a little more stable than that. I created my wing. Just go ahead and make it with arcs or whatever. You're gonna need to make sure it joins, and you're gonna make sure that you can extrude it. So I've already extruded. Then you need to decide how many pieces you want in that wing. I want it to be a little bit thicker pieces. I want them to be more stable. So I just chose to do the 3. Now, another issue you're gonna run into is this is an angle. Now, do I wanna keep it at an angle? Do I want to work on an angle? I don't. I typically like to work on a straight line. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to use my angular dimension to determine what my angle is here. And it's 15. So I should be able to take this, and the other dimensions don't really matter, and rotate it 15 degrees. Now if I have ortho on, you're not gonna be able to see it, but if I move it 15 degrees, it should now be straight because my original midline is a straight line. So now I can work on this relatively easily. You don't need these measurements. They're just there to show you what I was working with. Now that this is a solid object and I want these components out of it, I'm gonna slice. So that's just from the solid tab. And I already have the delineations created. So those are gonna be my planes that I'm gonna slice along. So if I go ahead and I slice here, I can just choose my planes. And then you should have 1, 2. Then I'm gonna select this again, I'm gonna slice and then select that, enter, slice and come down this plane, and now I should have 1, 2, and now I have 3, I want 4, so I'm gonna pick the last portion of it and go down the axis, okay? You have to be looking at it straight on or it's not gonna work exactly the same, so just keep that in mind as you go. So now I have these apart. So I'm gonna kind of exaggerate my opening because it'll be easier for you to see everything that's going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this just to make sure I don't make an error while I'm walking through the whole design process. So now I want this one to stay intact because it's gonna need to be attached to the body, and I'm gonna take these 3 and I'm gonna move them, and we'll go out with this ortho on, go out. Let's just do a 1/4 inch. It's a little big, so you might want it to be a little different, but it will function for what we want. And then each of them are gonna go out the same because you're gonna need to make your hinge points along the same locations. And so if they're even, homogeneous, then it's gonna be easier to place your pieces, okay? So now you can see that it's shifted from the original. So I'm gonna grab it and I'm gonna move it. I don't really need the outline, but we'll just deal with that for a minute. So I'm gonna delete the outline. Okay, so here's my wing that I'm dealing with, here's my body. So one thing I need to know is how high I extruded it. So this one is a 2.8. Now, I would suggest you make it something simple to remember. The reason I say that is when you make a link for printing purposes, to make sure it's as clean as possible, you kind of want your link to begin at the base so that it has something to be printed along. If you think about printing, it's printing a wet plastic that's malleable on top of itself so that it can actually become a structure. So if it's trying to print something out in thin air, it's going to be less conducive to printing. It's going to look stringy and not be consistent, and it might affect your hinge. So now that I know my height, I want to look at this and decide on where and how I'm going to make them. So let's go ahead and pick your midline, and we'll go with the smallest one, because if I choose the largest one, I may have an issue. So if this is my smallest one, let's go and move this to be like midway through, okay? And then I'll just mirror it over. Okay, so this is going to be my point of attachment for my hinge that I create. Now I know how tall it's going to be, and then I have to decide how long it's going to be. So I placed it right here. If I did everything correctly, it should fit right in that spot, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and place it over here. So now most of my work is going to be focusing on this little block I just created. So I know that the distance between my pieces is 1/4. So there's many ways you can do it. You can copy and move it over. You can go ahead and create a line that dictates. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger than the space I have, and I'm just going to copy, not move. I'm going to copy. So I'm going to select the piece, and I'll move it over here. So this is basically my gap, and these are basically, think of them as the sides of your pieces. So what I'm going to suggest you do is you actually make it as an oval, and I would just use your ellipse. So you're going to need to change your plane. You see how this is drawing on this this surface here? It's not really going to help you out. The other thing you need to know about ovals is it is just like the circle and going from the center point. So what I would suggest to do is, one, we're going to change our plane. So we're going to go to coordinates, and let's just change it by face, and we're going to make it this face here so that it's easier to draw on. And I'm going to make a line that cuts the face, and that's going to serve as my center point for this oval. So I need one to kind of go similar to this, okay? Now, it needs to be a little bit smaller than that because I am going to sweep it. And so you have to take that into account. So let's go ahead and offset it. I'm going to offset it, and I'm going to do a 16th. Let's see. Okay, that's better. So what this gives us is the help in determining the size of our tube or our shape that we use for the link itself. But this can be our base that we work with. Now, it's definitely in the wrong orientation. We're going to need 2. So let's just go ahead and I'm going to rotate this around its center point, and I really just want to go like that. Okay? So now you can see it's going to cut this way, right? So I'm also going to create a copy of it from here, and we'll just put it up here so you can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to rotate this one, but because this one is a 2D object, I have to use 3D rotate if I want. Always make sure that it's doing what you want it to do. Let's just say that. Okay, so I'm going to rotate it so it lies flat, and now they're perpendicular to one another if you look at it. Take this one out so it's not as difficult to see. So now I have 2. Now I don't love the way this looks. So if you notice, so I want this linkage to be big enough so that it will give me some movement and enough space that I can print it without problem. And then I want to go ahead and play with this a little bit. So I want it to be thick. I don't want it to be a circle. What we've done previously is made it a circle, and that's fine for a sweep, but I want to give this a little more body. So for this one, I'm going to say make a rectangle. Depending on the rectangle and the rectangle's placement and what axis is on it, it's going to attach and sweep the object differently. So if I have it here and I sweep it and I look at it, the thinner portion of the rectangle is at the top and the larger is on the sides, if you can see that. So then let's go ahead and rotate it and see if that changes how it behaves in the sweep. So if I select this as my sweep and now you can see it's thinner on the height but wider on the width. So then you have to decide what you want, and it may be different for either one depending. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna copy these because I'm gonna need them for the other portion of this, because I may want it different for the two different ones. So this one I'm gonna go ahead and utilize, and I'm gonna use this one for that in that orientation. And then what I wanna do, because I want it to be aligned, let's see here, with the edges, is I'm gonna actually scale it up, okay? So if I scale this from here, right, I want it to interact with the sides. It's not gonna matter if it goes past here. Does that make sense? It does not matter. I mean, this is not in the best location. I'm gonna place it in the middle. So take it from its center point and okay. And I use the reference. If you have your reference lines on, you can use that. It can be glitchy, so be careful. So really, I don't need this back portion of it, right? Because that's not gonna help me in my link. So I'm gonna go ahead and just take that out because I don't need it for this design. So I'm leaving it. I'm going to go solid. I'm going to say slice. This is what I'm slicing, and this is the plane I'm slicing on. Again, I'm looking at it straight on. Now it's gone. So orientation, so just do a 3D rotate. Make sure you rotate it so that it's perpendicular to this one here, the original we have there. And then what I would do, is I want the center point on it, and I don't want any questions of what I'm actually, where I'm attaching it. I'm going to move this whole thing. Sometimes with these objects, if they are not on the right plane, this one is not allowing me to do a geometric center, and I don't really know why. So I'm just gonna move forward. Sometimes you'll just have to decide that it's not that important to you. So now I'm going to sweep it with our rectangle again, same one, and do that. So they should be relatively similar. And spaced well for our design, okay? So now I want to look at it like this from the side, because this one is now a lot bigger because guess what? The orientation of it is too big. And I used the same circle that I used from the other one, which was this from this wider piece. So I can't do that, which is fine. So I'm just going to scale it. And so I want to look at it from the side, and I want to scale it. I'm going to make sure I'm on my right plane so it doesn't get confused with what I'm doing. Scale it from its center point, and I'm going to make sure my snaps are off because I want to do whatever I want to do. And I want to make sure that I'm at least close to the edge here because of the printing. So that looks pretty good. The only thing that's different about this one, okay, as compared to the other, is look how thin it is now. I'm not real happy with that. You have an easy solution though. You want this to be thicker. You can do press pull on it. If it isn't accepting press pull, because sometimes depending on the capacity of your computer and its abilities, you may not be able to do that. But an easy way to just thicken it, if that's your main goal, is just to thicken it, is find a point on your object and duplicate it. Then you can just do a union on it and it should work just fine. Okay, so now it should be a single entity. And if I look at it from the top, it feels thick enough. If I look at it from the side, I have enough gapping, and I'm happy with that. Okay, so then let's unhide our object, and here we have the two. Now this one obviously is wider because of the height, so that will be a difference in your linkage. If that's a bother, then you might want to change it, but it works just fine. Now, the nice thing about this one is you don't need to add anything to this link to print it, because it is right at the base of your object. So that one's fine. Now, you could do a fillet edge. Let me get some of this cleaned up because the computer's freaking out. And fillet edge, not that big, right? These pieces, so that it looks a little cleaner if you want, but you know, it doesn't need to be anything substantial, because you don't want to really affect the integrity of the overall link or its strength. You can just create a smoother appearance to it. And you do the same on the other if you want. I need to do a base, because if I'm printing up in this direction, I need this piece, right, to be smooth. And so one way I'm thinking about doing it, and sometimes it's a matter of playing with the object and deciding how it's going to work best, is to give it another piece here as a support for printing purposes. Do it like this. Okay, so I want to make this arc here, and I don't want to draw it off plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, make sure I'm using my rectangle I just created, and I'm going to, turn my ortho off, of course, and I'm going to make an arc, and I'm just going to make sure I'm snapping to the right points. And that's going to work, I think, for that. And then I just need my lines, and I may need to manipulate it, and that's totally fine, because right now we're just kind of figuring out what's going to work. So I'm going to join that, and then I'm going to place it in line with this and just see what I need to do. Now I think I should be able to just say I need the tip taken off. Now I doubt it's in line with this. Oh, it is. Okay, so we're fine. So I'm going to bring this to there. Okay, so now I should have this piece that I've created, right? It's not closed, so I do need to close it. And no, I want it to go to my corner piece. So let's pull this out. Or I can just isolate that one too, hide it. So this one, I want to make sure that nothing's dragging it off. So I'm going to go ahead and go from this point to this point. Now, I don't know, something weird is going on. So I may have to make some changes, but we'll see. Okay, so if that's my piece here, and now I'm going to end my object isolation. Okay, I need this to extrude. Uh-oh. extrude. Wait, have my object. I need this to extrude the overall width of that. Okay? So now I have this piece down there like that, right? However, I also have it sticking out. I don't want that. So let's see if I can press pull it through here. Now remember, press pull can also be used for subtracting, right? So that's awesome and it helps. Our other option is, can we press pull these out of there? And probably not. Doesn't usually work that way. Let's go ahead and make this easier to see. Okay, so now I have this piece. And it's not letting me press pull through, which is a shame, because that makes life easier when you can do that. But not really a big deal, because I can go ahead and cut it. So I really just need my circle back. So what I'm going to do is, I don't need my circle, I'm going to center point. I'm going to do a line, make sure it stayed on the right plane, and it didn't really. There, I need it on that plane, so it's all on the same plane. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another ellipse that goes to the points I need it to go to. Doesn't want to stay back there, so I'm going to try and go there. Okay. So if I look at it like this, right, should be pretty good. I'm going to offset it. It's just an easy way to do it. And I'm just going to do it by eye, because this is not something that needs to be exact. I'm going to offset that. And then once you, okay, so you make it a region. Have it in wireframe. And then you should be able to say, I want to keep this, but I want to delete that. And then when you look at it in conceptual, there's a hole. All right. So then let's see if press pull is working. And not, I should be able to give this, extrude this. Okay. And it just needs to be bigger than the object. Look at it from the side. Okay. And move it so that it covers the whole thing. Now you obviously should look at it in either wireframe or in X-ray to make sure this whole piece is being covered. Now obviously it is. So then what I would do is I would just subtract it. I want to keep this, but I want to subtract that. And then I should have my little hinge point that I wanted. Okay, so now, and you can see now it looks more of a unified piece. Let's unhide everything. And now I have this one with that concrete base on the edge, and then this link here, okay? So then this I can use basically as my linkage. Now, is it too tight here? It might be. You might have to back that off a little bit, but you can play with either of these so that they'll work for your design. So let's say we do this. Let's say we copy this. And we use our points that we created here. And we place it. Okay? Now, this one can go. Okay, so now I have these links set in. I need to look at it from the side and make sure that this one they're not touching. Now, it should probably be backed off a little bit. So if I look at it here, maybe this one, right? Turn off your snaps, comes this way. Just enough that you don't have to worry about it. Now this piece doesn't need to exist. And let's look at it here. In wireframe, this piece does not need to exist. Neither of those were just our kind of understanding of what we were doing. Now, what I would suggest is mirror this over, mirror it from, and you can pick any midpoint if it can give you a midpoint. Just make sure it's straight, and you're going to bring it over here. Click. No. All right, so now I have that. So just go ahead and copy these. And you'll just copy them. And you're going to move them into place. Now, I didn't measure them. You should measure them. I mean, that makes more sense than what I did. But you want to make sure your gapping is the same. You want to make sure that these bleed into the actual body, and then look at it and make sure. Now, here, I don't want anything past this plane. And it looks like it's fine. Now, this, because I moved it, see, it is not as smooth a transition with the build. So I would say that we should probably recreate it, or you move these back, right? So each one of them, along with your pieces, gets moved back. So remember, if you're moving things around to accommodate, you have to pick all the pieces that are going to affect it. So if I do that, right, look at it straight on. Of course it did that. Okay. Pick all your pieces. Now, if I want these moved so that this is more in line with the edge, I'll have to do that. And then I'll have to do it to all of them. These move, not the piece. Move. Watch it, and you're going to want to go from here to there, okay? And then the same detail here, where you're just going to move this piece. Oops, make sure you grab all of them with a crossing box. If you don't do the crossing box, you haven't gotten all of them to there. So now I have my butterfly wing, right? And these are all aligned. They're a little too big. You could also scale this down. That's true too. So now that I have it set up where I can see my wing, I don't necessarily need this to be at a 15-degree angle. Because I just rotate it from this point with that off so you can see it better, and you just can go bring it back to where it was at the angle. Because now what you're going to do is you have your wing. Create your body any way you want to, but you'll have this whole piece here, right, that you can mirror across the plane. Right? And this will just be attached, however you want to make that. Now, we want the body to be flat, because if the body's not flat, it's going to have a problem with the printing. So I would suggest with something like this to create a body, and let's put it in wireframe so we can look at this a little easier. I would say create a body that fits this little profile here, and then maybe you can round out the top but leave the bottom flat. So maybe we make a body that connects these points. And I think I'll just use a start-end angle. Start-end angle. And remember, whenever you use these, you can just do whatever you want with them, really, okay? And then from there, I really just need it to make the shape I'm interested in, which let's do something that's more like, ooh. Just something like this. And I want it to kind of stick out a little bit from here. So I think I'm gonna make a little line here to give me some references, and we'll just make a line from here to here, okay? And then I'm gonna take this down. I'm gonna take this line down to the midpoint there. Okay, and then let's mirror that across. I want it to be the same. Turn your ortho on, go on, good. And then we'll just connect this. Remember, these are little pull points that you can use. This is your, okay, let's join that. And that should be fine. It's still a line and not anything else. Just extrude it. Okay. And maybe you want it a little bit higher, so we could do like a 0.35 on it. And then if we do that, right, you can, let's see. Okay. So your main problem is going to be this point here. Now, if you wanted, you could make it a point. I'm not going to worry about it. So now I have my little body. It's kind of rounded, just kind of there. Okay. Didn't do antenna because they're usually too thin. Look at it in conceptual. Now it is overblown so that I could show you kind of some of the details. No, just remember, you're going to want to make sure your links are attached. Make sure that your links are easy for it to print, so they're clean. You don't want something sticking out perpendicular from your object. If you do that, it's going to be more difficult to create. And think about the design. Now, this is a flat surface. If you want something that's a little bit more elaborate, you're going to have to eat into the body that you're creating to create a more cohesive look. So if I wanted this to be a little more cohesive, then these could be closer together, and then maybe I'm cutting out a cupped shape in here so the link embeds more into the overall design of the linkage. But this is just a basic, get your feet wet, figure it out, understand what needs to happen in order to create some of these 3D objects.